Alright, let's get started here. So today we're going to talk about objects and arrays. So this is going to be a very important concept in programming, so definitely something you should remember. So what is an object? So an object represents data. So far we have simple variables. We have an integer, we have numbers, we have strings, we have booleans, but there are more complex variables out there that can keep track of like a more complex object. So that's where kind of the idea of an object come from. So object at its very core is a pair of keys and values. The keys are always strings and the values can be anything. And you indicate them with the curly braces. So it's kind of hard to understand it without a example. So here, let's have an example of an object. Let's say we have an object called player. So you notice that this is the same format we declare any other variables, but instead of immediately following it with the value, we have the curly braces indicating like, hey, this is an object. And then down here, we have two pairs of name and value. So the first one, the name is called player name as the string player name, and the value is the string octavic. And down here, we have the name called score with the value 1 through 37. So these are examples of properties that exist on the object that is a key value pair. You have the key, which is player name, and you have the value, which is octavic, or you have the key, that's score, and the value is 1337. So this kind of represents perhaps a player in your player base that has a name and a score. So in order to access this and modifying it, it's you use the dot operation to kind of access the property of a object. So here we have the object player, and then when you want to change the player name, you can just do player dot player name equals. Notice how this looks just like you're assigning values to a variable, but what you're saying is like, okay, instead of assigning it to a variable, I want to assign it to a property of an object, and the object is the player object, and the property is player name. And when you access it, you access it as just like any other variable. You can almost pretend that player name is a variable in itself, in which in a sense it is. It's kind of attached to the player variable, and you access it with the dot operator. So we can like try this out. So we have var player equals name topic score 1 2 3 4. We can do like we'll start with the first part where we just access it, and we just want to say like, okay, player dot player name. So now when we run this, you see octavic because it's grabbing the variable, and then through the dot it's like, okay, I should probably grab the property of the object. If you don't include this part and you print the object itself, it actually will print the entire object. It will have the nice little curly braces as well to indicate that this is an object. It'll have all the fields. If we have more fields, A, B, C, we have B, B, C. You might pretend I use double commas, and it will print it all as well. If you want to access a single one of them, you go to the property and you print it out. And then modifying the property is the same way. So you do player name equals, maybe it's a new player. And then now if we log console.player name, now we get new player because it used to be octavic and then it got overridden, and now it's new player. Okay. So that is not the only way you can access a property, however. You can also access it with a square bracket if you know what this is. You can pass it in as a string. This is not very commonly used, but imagine something like let's say we have a player. Let's make it more robust. Like we have your first name as John. We have middle name as J or L, sure, and the last name is Smith. So we have a player object that has their first, middle, and last name, and we want to grab, like for whatever reason, we want to dynamically decide which one of these we want to show. So we can have a variable called name to show, and this will match one of these three keys that exist on the variable. So if I say, okay, I want to know what the first name of the player is, then instead of doing player.firstname, you can do this, name to show, and when you name to show. And when you run this, it takes whatever this string is, and it will access the variable as if this is the key, and it will get the value that exists here. Okay, so if we change this to middle name, middle name. And now we run this, and it will show L because that's what his middle name is. If we change to some property that this object does not have, then just like every other variable, if you don't initialize it, the value is undefined. So if you try to grab a property of or the key of a object that doesn't exist, you'll get undefined. Okay, so that is it. So that's for objects, and because as I have mentioned earlier, objects will have key value pairs. The key must be a string, but the value can be anything, including another object. So in our case, first we have an object called it's a game, right? So we have a title, Minecraft. We have a score, 9.7, very high score. And down here we have a second object. We have a player. We have a name. We have a score, and we have their favorite game, which you notice is this variable right here. And because we are assigning it to that, now the value of, so we have the player object, and the key, if we try to get the key of favorite game, we're going to get the value, which is an object. If we want to get the title of that object, we do dot title. So you can chain these dots as long as they're matching object. So we can once again replicate this. So I'm actually just gonna copy this, go back in here, and now when we run, we get Minecraft. We can also simplify it by, instead of having this here, you can declare it directly instead of having two variables. This is also some valid things that you can do. Remember, you have player name, so you have key value pairs. This is a little bit more complicated because it's a nested object within an object. But once you realize which pair of curly braces matches to which, it will start making sense. So here we have these two are our simple properties on this object, which is a key value pair with very straightforward. And down here we have a more complex one with a key, and the value is another object which we declare that has the key of title Minecraft and another set of key value pair of score 9.7. And if we want to access the title, we access it like that. If we want to access the score, we access it like that. So now we print it out, we get Minecraft 9.7. Okay, so that is about it for objects. There are a lot more things you can do with objects, but at this very, very core essence, remember that is a key value pair. You have objects can have at least, well, like it can have also no key and no values. It can just be an empty object, but most objects will have key value pairs with a unique key that directs to a unique value. And if you try to grab a value by an invalid key, you will get undefined. Okay. All right. Cool. So. Objects. Next, let's talk about arrays. So arrays are a type of object. So I know this, technically in the world of Node.js, array is a type of object, but you should consider them completely different structures because they represent different things. When you have an object, you have strings as keys. When you have an arrays, you will have numbers as keys. In which case you access the list of items. So think of an array as a list of something. It's very similar to objects, but you indicate it with a square bracket instead of a curly bracket. And you access the array by the index instead of the field name. So remember earlier we have objects and you access it with this. In arrays, you're going to access with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 with numbers, which is where the element is located. And lastly, very important is that in Node.js, array is index 0, which means the first element have an index of 0. The second element will have an index of 1, and the third element will have an index of 2. It is kind of just off by 1. It is kind of counterintuitive, but you will just get used to it. And a lot of language have the similar feature where the first element of the array have the index of 0. Okay, so let's look at an example of an array. So we have a array of numbers. So why don't we replicate that as well. So we have numbers as an array. So if we just do this is an empty array with nothing in it, and inside you can put as many elements as you want, separated by the comma. So I can do 0, 1. I can even do a string. You can mix and match types within here as well. You can also do objects, though this is not really recommended. An array should have a purpose, which means the elements should be parallel and should have the same should be the same type at least. So let's make it more generic. So now we have a list of numbers. So and you can access it with a square bracket. So unlike the objects, you can't really do this. You need to use the square bracket to access an array. So if we're typing 0 for the index, we're going to get the actually even better. Let's have it be 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So if we try to grab the 0th element, which in English is the first element. Oh, sorry, not number. It's numbers. We're going to get 1 because, again, it's index 0. So if we're passing 0 as the index, we get the first element. If we're passing 2 as the index, we're going to get the third element, which in our array is 3. So that is how array works. And of course, you can modify it just like before. So if we do numbers.0, I'm actually going to change this to 99. And now if we log that, we're going to get 99 instead because we swap out the number that's in the beginning of the array. Instead of 1, we're changing it to 99. And of course, you can also add more elements to the array. You can do, so right now we have 0, 1, 2, 3. The next one will be 4. Numbers 4 equals 5. And now if we console log that, we're going to get that. And just like an object, you can just toss in the array, and Node.js will display the entire array with the nice square brackets kind of surrounding them and the elements separated by a comma. And I think you are able to assign a index to something that skips over values. And as you can see, we're skipping over what comes after because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The index 4 element is actually missing, but we're assigning 5. So we're able to do this. It's not really recommended, but here you see like Node.js does accept it, and it will say like, okay, we have one empty item, we kind of just skipped over that one, but we do have another one here. But when you operate with arrays, you should try to keep it compact, and there are a lot of methods that keep your array clean without these little holes within your data. Okay, and we'll talk about them in the future. Cool. So today's homework is going to be a little bit more complicated. I recommend you take this slide and just copy this object to be used as your test code. So what you want to do is I'm going to have you write a function that takes a player object, and then you are going to go through and print first of all the player name, and then their favorite game and their least favorite game. And the way you determine that is underneath the player object, they will have a property with the key games, the value being an array, which is all the games that they have the games that they have played, rated from their favorite game to their least favorite game. And I'll guarantee you that the games array will have exactly 3 elements, and it will look exactly like this player object here. So that is your homework. Just kind of practice to how to access the properties of an object and how to access an element in the array. That is it from me. See you guys next time.